had a thought recently that I wanted to bring to Fanti Table Talk. Okay, I was on the phone scrolling my life away on the tickety-tocketies, and I saw this video of a black girl and her white friend, okay? Now, the video it was on TikTok, right? So they always got them filters. And it used one of those filters that swaps the mouths of the two people in the video. Have you seen that before, Jerry?
It's a little creepy. It's a little scary, not gonna lie.
It is. It absolutely is. Okay, but that's the filter that the video used, okay? So then the black girl proceeded to say nigga, but the mouth on the white girl is the one that says nigga because of the filter, right?
Oh, the devil is alive.
Don't ask me about my ex, let's just pretend that nigga died. Ain't no pressure by no nigga, tell his ass to fall in line.
The white girl is horrified, right? Which, like, leads me as well as the black friend in the video to cackle. We are cackling because the white girl is just like horrified at what has just happened on this video. So I'm laughing. I think it's funny. I keep on scrolling, okay? And then another video popped up. Okay, this one.
Because the algorithm is the algorithm.
Listen, okay, this might tell y'all a lot about what I'm watching on TikTok and less about these videos, but we'll deal with that later, okay? So I kept on scrolling and another video popped up. This one was of an older black woman and her, similar aged best friend who is a white woman, right? Now, the white woman is giving like Tina Marie vibes, like she probably grew up around black folks, she's just as country, just as quote unquote black, right, as we would say her friend is, okay? And she's just like talking and carrying herself in a similar way that like older black women talk. And I can only imagine that this is because of the community that she's grown up in, being best friends with this other older black woman. I know y'all know what I mean, okay, when I'm just saying, she got the twang and she got the neck rolling just like the rest of us. Okay? So, both of these videos got me thinking about black folks who have white friends or friends who happen to be white. More on that distinction in a second. But it got me thinking about my one white friend. Yes, I only have one. He is lucky. Okay? And in particular, it got me thinking about why I only have one white friend. Okay, or friend who happens to be white. Again, we will get to that distinction momentarily. By momentarily, I mean right now. Because while we were producing this episode, okay, I was reminded of an Instagram story gem by comedian Amanda Seales about the differences between white people and people who happen to be white, which feels like an apt place to start our discussion today. Take a look/listen.
For those who don't know, there's only two kinds of white people. White people and people who happen to be white. People who happen to be white understand that whiteness is a construct created only to oppress, and they use the privilege that comes out of that construct to give access for other people who don't have that privilege. White people actually believe the lie that white is supreme and consider it to be some real shit that actually makes them better. Which, of course, if you believe that something that was created only to oppress makes you better, you ain't shit. Ba-dum-bum. And remember, if your black friends aren't talking to you about how shitty white people are, it's probably because you are a white person, not a person who happens to be white, and they are also not really your black friends. So remember that. By the way, I know everyone calls like white girls Becky's, and I call like white women Becky's, and I call women who happen to be white Hannah. Just so you know.
For the record, I'm just happy to know that somebody else inserts music stings in the middle of conversation. Ba-da-ba! Like, I appreciate it.
Yes, okay. So, love this video, and I want to use it as a jumping off point, for this conversation and ask you, Jared, in what ways has this concept of, white people versus people who happen to be white shown up for you in your life?
Well, I've said for a long time that my favorite kinds of white people are the white people who can call white people. Because they get that there's a thing that's happening, right? I appreciate white people who get that. White people and people who happen to be white. This is an interesting dynamic that I appreciate the way that she's worded it, because for me, the pandemic has been has really brought up a lot of shit that I've been dealing with about white people and largely white women. I've had some really terrible working experiences with white women, and like I'm not going to say their names because I don't have to, but like I also have no problem talking about who they were and what they did because they were awful.
And
but
we've had that conversation on the show before. They can go back and listen to those episodes if they would like the tea.
Listen, and like it is what it is. And like for me, I started dealing with a lot of the different things that my experiences with white women over the course of the pandemic, after coming off another job where I worked with a white woman who was really, really terrible in a lot of ways. Great in some ways, but terrible in a lot. And like I have a friend who happens to be white who I met in 4th grade, and we've known each other for a long time. We've not been like super close, but we've always been in contact. And she would call me and sometimes like have questions about like, well, how do you think about this? Or what is your perspective on that? And I respected the way that she approached questions. But like after 2020, I remember having a really difficult time engaging with her and like saying to her, like, I need a minute. Right. And I also really appreciated and respected the fact that she was able to say, like, I get it. Whatever you need, let me know. And like, I will pull back and like chill a little bit with questions. And since then we've had dinner in person, and like been able to talk and been a little bit more free. But like my white friends, like I do have people who are friends that are white, and like I grew up in the Bay Area where it was a lot more diverse than your experience would have been in Charlotte, North Carolina Charleston,
Not
South Carolina.
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Sorry,
I'm
Charleston,
not from
South Carolina.
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Sorry.
The disrespect.
The way that I just played Charleston, I'm so sorry. I love y'all. No shame.
Wow.
But like I know that my growing up experience in school was a different experience as far as our racial dynamics were concerned. Are you okay? Are you okay?
The disrespect.
Y'all can now for YouTube,
Anyway.
This is a great time to be watching because there's so much face and face. But like, yeah, my experience with white folks has been a journey the last few years here.
I understand what you mean by that, right? Now, Charleston is a very white city. I want to be clear, okay?
Not as Charlotte's a little blacker from what I hear.
Probably. But in Charleston, you walk a little too far from, the touristy areas and you might end up on, the Wayland, or you end up on, those are, I was going to go down a list of Black areas and neighborhoods in Charleston, but it doesn't matter.
I think you're doing a thing and I don't know what you're doing, but I'll roll with it. Like,
the point is that Charleston's a very white place. Nonetheless, I do think that I grew up in varied racial communities because I was a military brat, right? And so when you're on the military base, you got a little bit of everybody, at school or your neighbors or riding the bus or whatever the case may be. But I was never, such as the case with a lot of military kids, I never really had like long-term friends as a kid because we about to move in 2 years. Ain't no need for me to play, Maki Dada with you, and then I gotta, color purple it in 2 years, because I gotta get, drawn away, right?
You know what?
I never.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And so I never really like built those types of relationships. But in adulthood, right, I have found myself in spaces with, white people and people who happen to be white. And I think there's a second category, which is white people who are also people who happen to be white, right? Because you can never be too safe. You can never be too sure, okay? Because whiteness is an illness. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
It is. Which I mean, let me explain. By which I mean, right, whiteness and the connecting ideas about white people, whiteness being superior, right, automatically, just because, you know, you looking like, you know, a bottle of oat milk or whatever, right, it is a problem, right? And it is such it is such an overarching and all-consuming entity that even the people who are committed, regardless of their race, to, you know, undoing whiteness or combating whiteness, we all have the capacity, right, to uphold it and to platform it in ways that we are conscious of and ways that we are not conscious of, right? And I think with Black people, but also more so for this conversation with white folks, you got to watch your white friend. Even my one white friend, baby, I'm always, you know, looking out the side of my eyeballs because he's also a straight white man, you know, like, y'all know what it is. And so that is what I think about when I think about, right, the difference between white people and people who happen to be white. But you had came up with a question, you kind of spoke about it already, which is like how our experiences with whiteness and white people have shifted since 2020 in particular, when there was just a lot more, let's say, discourse.
I was going to say discovery, but
that too?
Yeah.
That too? You know, around issues of race for a lot of people. And then for us as journalists, our industry, right, allegedly went through a time of atoning and wrestling.
A moment.
A moment.
A moment, not a movement. Come on.
You mentioned that the pandemic altered some things for you. Talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I left the radio station that I worked at in January of 2020, making a conscious decision not to renew my contract because I did not want to be attached to the person that I was attached to anymore. Had they continued to have us month to month the way that we were before that, I would have stayed. Right? Because it was fine month to month. Mm-hmm. But the idea of another year, I was like, there's no way. And like, I didn't have another job lined up, but I knew other possibilities were coming. But like, leaving that job and then the pandemic starting a month later, we had just started this show, like really had to deal with a lot of the ways that I felt about that job and that experience, and like having that experience again, right? With a white woman who like oftentimes was trying to sabotage my work and my life. And like, I quit my job because of her, right? And so like, it's not just about the work, it's about my livelihood and trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. And like, having had that kind of experience multiple times with white women was really challenging for me. But like, I spend time like asking God what this is about, because I know for myself that like, I also have a white woman who's my assistant, right? Who's been my assistant for now almost 5 years. And like, that has been such a fantastic relationship. And I love her and I appreciate her. And as she's leaving now, I've had to like struggle with what it's been like to really have some strong feelings about white women and the way that they show up in the world. And also women who happen to be white who are in my life that have been really, really good.
So I thank you for sharing, but I want to, I personally think there's a difference between like the white people that we come into contact with for work purposes, mm-hmm. right? Versus the white people who we're friends with, mm-hmm. right? Because there is, or at least I'll speak for myself. When I was in a workplace, I'm no longer in a workplace, but when I was in a actual workplace, you know, I found myself, let's say, less unfolded in that workplace for the various reasons that we fold ourselves, right, to be able to exist and survive and navigate the various spaces that we have to navigate. But in my personal life, you know, I'm just a lot more relaxed and open and flexible and comfortable with saying and articulating the things that I need to say and articulate. And so what I would love to hear you speak to is, I wonder if, and maybe this is what you're saying, that like the experiences that you are having in this particular workplace with white people and their whiteness paired with the broader white foolishness going on in our society and culture, I'm interested in hearing how that impacted your personal relationships with white people on like a friend level, if at all. Maybe it didn't, but I kind of see a difference between the two.
Well, like I noticed myself being a lot more distant with the white people in my life. First off, like not wanting to engage, talking specifically about like 2020 and into 2021 when I was like the most depressed, because my depression like went to suicidal ideation by January of 2021, right? And so like engaging with a bunch of white people was not something that was easy to do, but also becoming president at NABJLA in 2021 meant that I had to start working with other leaders of other organizations, right? Who were white, who were from various different backgrounds. And I remember thinking to myself like, oh, I'm going to have to like engage with white people in a different kind of way. Right. And like, it's been eye-opening and challenging, because I also feel clear that like everyone who is assigned to my voice and my call and my, you know, the anointing that's on me is not Black, right? And everyone that is following me and like attached to like the work that I'm doing is not white. I mean, it's not Black. And like having to like embrace and recognize like, oh, the people that are really attached to the things that I'm putting out into the world, or that really resonate, that have resonance with the things that I'm doing, are not only Black.
You mean all the white people who listening to this podcast right now? How y'all doing?
I mean, them included. Yes. Hey, white people, how you doing? Right? And like, that's been a challenge. That has been hard. And I don't know that I'm getting to the core of your question or not, but like, it's been something that has been on my mind a lot.
And that's all right. That's okay. That's okay. You answer what you want to answer, friend.
Listen, give me your question again, then. Fine. I don't
no.
But
well,
yeah.
Well, so let's do this. Let's jump into the fan and the anti of it, right? Of, you know, being in close relationship with white people. I mentioned my one white friend, and so this is really interesting because everything I'm going to say, at least on the fan side, is specifically this one person. It is not, I don't know if it's something that can be, you know, copy and pasted for, you know, other white folks. But one of the things that I should give a disclaimer first. There are lots of memories and lots of, you know, great times that me and my white friend has had, okay?
Are we not saying his name?
We can say his name is Kyle. Okay. But I'm giving the disclaimer that, you know, there's a lot of memories and positivity and wondrousness about our friendship that, you know, you all should take as a given, because he's still in my life. Because if he wasn't doing good in my life, he wouldn't be here. Praise the Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay. But in the course of business and work and negotiation, having a straight white man that I can call and be like, I'm thinking of asking for this amount of money. What do you think about that? And to hear the ways that he articulates and thinks about negotiating and business and work and like navigating those spaces to get what he feels like he is due. You know, we as Black folks, as women, as femmes, as queer people, we brown folks, you know, we be thinking we asking for the world when we ask for a raise or when we're in a negotiation. We're like, ooh, how is that too much money to ask for? But these white men in particular, baby, those thoughts don't often cross their mind, right? And so we be thinking we be asking for the world, but these motherfuckers be going in here asking for the galaxy, right?
on.
Like and that's because, right, they've been reared in a world most often and taught, right, to, in different ways to like go after these things in such a way. And we as Black folks, queer folks, you know, trans folks, brown folks, y'all know, all of the people, we just don't grow up in those communities. And so being able to witness that, you know, what's that statement that everyone says now, like move through the world or like negotiate like you are a mediocre white man or whatever. That's not to say that my white friend is a mediocre white man. However, you know,
and
there is just a different kind of headspace that I find that he in particular, but and I feel like we've seen this replicated in society and culture by other folks, that they move through the world just very differently. And that's not to say that I want to, you know, reproduce some of the harms, right, that come with moving through the world in those ways. But I definitely have seen myself take some slithers of that and incorporate it into my own activity and my own operation, to be able to one, get my due, right? But to then be able to take that due and do something great with it for other people. That's my main fan about having a white friend.
Well, I think to this piece that you're talking about, you said earlier, like you talked about whiteness being an illness, and it makes me think about the way that we talk about like all white people are racist, period, right? Like it would be impossible for a white person to grow up in this world and have the messages fed to them their whole lives that they get, to see the ways that we project whiteness out into the world and the ways that we project blackness and brownness and queerness and all the other things out into the world as well. Mm-hmm. It would be impossible for you to go into this world and not come out racist. And white people have come up with that language, right? Like Jane Elliott is the person who came up with that language, and talking about anti-racism and what it's like to be a white person. So like, I think white people have a hard time with that. Right? Because white people love to say, well, I'm not racist, or that wasn't racist, or whatever it was. Like, no, you're racist, period. Right? Like the same way that we talk about men and like, and misogyny, like men have been groomed to be misogynist the same way that women have been, right? The same way that white people are racist. Black and brown people have all got that same messaging. Right. Mm-hmm. We've seen those same magazine covers. We've watched those same fucking movies. We've seen those same stories again and again about black people being criminals and white people being the world and white women being beautiful and black women being too sexy, or white women being this and black folks being that, or those kinds of things. We've gotten those messages our entire lives. Right. So racism is not.
And they have too.
And they have, exactly.
They have
that's
gotten
my
those
point,
same messages.
right? And like the anti-blackness that is bred out of that is bred in white people the same way that it's bred in black people. And the misogyny that is bred in men is
and the
also
rest
bred
of
in women.
And rest of the colors as well.
And the rest of you people as well. So I say that to say, like, having a white friend, when we're talking about like the fringe benefits, if you will, right? Or the benefits of being able to like have a white person's perspective on like how you're making choices is definitely one of is definitely a benefit. But like even those moments, right? You hear them through a certain kind of lens. You watch in a certain kind of way, and you are able to like you're able to see it through a certain kind of perspective that says like, oh, you see this way because of how you came here, right? Or how you got to this moment.
Mm-hmm. And right, I just think there's something potentially instructive for us, you know, in witnessing that. I don't want to say studying it, but like realizing how we can take some of those things and use them for our gain and the gain of our communities, right? But let's get to the side of things, which, you know, I'm sure the list is long for many of us. The reason when I started thinking about why I only have one white friend, or one friend who happens to be white, I don't know, you know, he is both white and happens to be white at the same time. Go ahead.
I think it's important to say that we've talked on this show before. You and I have been friends since, well, that's an important distinction. You and I have known each other since 2016, right? August of 2016,
Sure.
I think, is when we met. Or maybe we met at convention in July or August or whatever it was. But we met.
It don't matter. Keep going.
Right. Summer of 2016. But like, you did not start calling me your friend until I think like 2021. Right? Where you were like, I mean, like you'll say, hey friend, or something like that. But like, I remember you referencing me as your friend and being like, oh, okay. That's a change in language that I did not recognize, that you didn't think of me as your friend until then, until like it started coming up. So when you say you only have one white friend, I want to be clear to people that you're not meaning that you only have one white person in your life, right? Like there's one white person that you are close to, that you have like close relationship. You work with white people. You see white people in the world.
Yes, I work with white people and see white people in the world because, you know, they're everywhere. But yes, and we did a whole episode about, you know, how I feel about the F word and, you know, how I don't extend the F word being friend to a lot of people.
I was like, faggotry?
I have a lot of...
Sorry. I don't have to do that.
I have a lot of, you know, colleagues, acquaintances, you know, what's the word that they use in
Are you about to say compatriot?
Compatriot. That is exactly what I was trying to say. Anyway, but I have a lot of words for a lot of people. Anyway, but okay, I was thinking about why I only have one white friend. And to be clear, I like those odds for me. That feels like enough. I'm not seeking
like
applications. But one of the reasons why I only have one white friend is because there have been white people in my life who perhaps wanted to be a friend, like wanted to build a relationship with me, and I may have wanted to build a closer friendship type relationship with them. But white folks love playing devil's advocate, and him don't need no help, okay? And particularly around issues that, you know, grow out of race or class or, you know, our lived experiences that they just might see differently for whatever reason. They love playing the devil's advocate. And I'm always like, I found in remembering those moments, I found myself saying that, oh, the reason why I got rid of you is because I don't want to do that work in my friendship, right? Like I don't want to have to do that. A lot of my work as who I am, you know, professionally, right, is about doing that type of work. And I'm not interested in doing that type of work when I'm trying to, you know, do a shot of vodka before we go out to the club, or when I'm sitting on the couch at home trying to do a movie night, right? I don't want to have to slip into that too much or too often, you know, because that's just not the headspace that I'm trying to be in when I'm trying to have friend time.
That's interesting to me because I feel like our perspective on this is certainly informed by the fact that we do DEI work. Right. And like talking to friends who work in diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of work, there is a different kind of burnout around race that shows up in our personal lives that I found. I don't know that that's true for everyone, but like that I've seen. I have been involved in like Black media since 2016, right? Before that, I was in more mainstream media. And then after Melania happened and the plagiarism scandal and breaking that story, it put me in a lot of different Black spaces, which was interesting because Black places were reaching out like, hey, we'd love to have you right here. Or we'd love to have you contribute. And so like that kind of started working on a lot more DEI kind of focused work or race focused public verticals and stuff like that. And I started working with a lot less white people, but like in instances when I was working with white folks, I did notice how the way that I was handled was different. The way that I was, you know, treated was challenging sometimes. And as you talk about this, like I think about how with white friends, as opposed to white coworkers and colleagues, like there is always still a question of like not always, but sometimes like you hear something a different kind of way. right? A comment, a joke, a reference, a story, and you're like, but like, and that is something that is hard to turn off, right? That is, you can't not hear it when someone is saying something. I was in an Uber yesterday going to dinner, and the driver was a white woman, and she had a European accent. I didn't ask her where she was from, but like, she was very chatty and like really, really wanted to talk. And it was challenging for me because she started talking about COVID and how hard it was, and that people, you know, really should have been working harder, and like people are just so lazy. Because I said to her that we didn't see, I feel like it's harder to get a car nowadays from Uber. And she was saying like people didn't go back to work because people are lazy and blah, 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 blah. And like, I just remember hearing that and thinking like, it is particularly white for you to come into this moment talking about COVID and how people should have been working harder, or people should have, you know, done their own personal work, when like, there are plenty of people who never had the opportunity to like chill and rest, or, you know, live off of their savings for a year and a half in the way that you did, because most people don't have that. And like, then the car got quiet, right? And like, it was another moment of being like, I can't not hear that you are a white woman saying this in this moment.
Well, you know, this makes me think of, and I know we're about to wrap shortly, this makes me think of, and I should say, right, you have to make your own decisions about the work or lack thereof that you are willing to do in your friendships, okay? And maybe you find a white person in your life who you don't have to do none of that with, right? And they already get it. They done read all of the books, okay? you know, they was ready for 2020, okay? They did more than just post a black square on Instagram. But right? It reminds me of the statement from Amanda Seal's video about like, if you are a white person and your black friend is not talking to you about how horrible white people are, then you might be part of the problem and you not really their friend anyway.